Now, if you want to go that way, then I'll have to recess this hearing for arrangements to be made, and then fix a date for a rehearing. Otherwise, my notes will constitute the only record of this proceeding.
I withdraw my request.
Well, as you know, in a disciplinary case, the burden of proof is on the employer, because his action gave rise to the grievance. Now, Mr. Calloway, are you ready to make your opening statement?
When the arbitrator asked me to give my opening statement, there's a phrase that I'm going to emphasize, and that phrase is, "We shall prove." Now, the only way that we can prove anything is to be fully prepared, and that means we must go over your testimony thoroughly.
Mr. Calloway, if I might, it's beginning to sound like I'm on trial here.
No one's on trial, Miss Curtis.
But don't you see how it looks? I've been at City Hospital in charge of X-ray for 3 months. He's been there 7 years. He's a very popular and a competent X-ray technician. I had to suspend him, and it makes me look like the villain.
Would you do it again?
Yes, I would.
Why?
Look, I know my job. I'm an experienced supervisor. David Novak has undermined my ability to perform my job. He's the type that spreads contempt for authority.
You don't like him, do you?
That Adidas Adonis? No, I don't. But that has nothing to do with my suspending him.
I personally believe you took the appropriate action. Judging from the facts, I would have done the same. The discipline was entirely justified. But we have to convince someone else, the arbitrator. When we get to the hearing, we will be dealing with the facts and only facts. The union will try to make you look like the villain. But believe me, if we document our case properly, if you answer their questions directly and truthfully, there is nothing at all to worry about. There was just cause.
Mr. Arbitrator, we shall prove that the city's efforts to recapture its right to enforce attendance rule is not based on caprice, but on a detailed analysis by a private consultant. The study shows extensive abuse by employees, which is very costly to the taxpayers. We shall prove that the employees were put on proper notice by posted bulletins and meetings with their supervisors, fully explaining management's intention to enforce the rule and to discipline violators. We shall prove that the grievant, Mr. David Novak, openly and defiantly continued to violate the rule after his supervisor had issued both oral and written warnings, thereby giving his supervisor no choice but to suspend him or forfeit the city's rights to enforce its work rule. We shall prove that management was entirely within its rights under a collective bargaining agreement in exercising its authority to discipline Mr. Novak, and that the discipline was entirely justified. Mr. Murphy, your opening statement, please.
Yes, sir. We intend to prove that the grievant was not properly put on notice. Management was arbitrary and capricious in its heavy-handed harassment and disciplining of Mr. Novak. The contract was violated in that there were no...
Mr. Arbitrator, Mr. Murphy is presenting argument, not an opening statement. Mr. Murphy, the purpose of an opening statement is to set forth your theory of the case, the fact that you intend to prove. So please limit your opening statement to
Dave, I think it's unwise to jog in front of City Hall.
He's right. You could help your case by cutting it out.
Somebody ought to let those people know how we feel.
Somebody is, Dave. That's what the grievance procedure and arbitration are all about.
Few lousy minutes. I was late a few lousy minutes, and it cost me 10 days.
You said you weren't late at all.
When?
Today you got the layoff notice.
I wasn't late that day. I was there. I was eating my lunch, and I was available for work.
But other days you were late.
Sure, everybody's late once in a while. I'm the best X-ray technician at City Hospital. Ask the doctors. Look in the records.
Let's look at what we have. Now, we have an advantage in a discipline case. Management has to prove its case to the arbitrator. All we have to do is poke holes in their arguments. And there are several ways we can do that. Now, first, we'll try to show that you were at your workstation at the proper time. If you were and can prove it, they've got no case. Or we might be able to show that you weren't properly warned of an impending disciplinary action. Or maybe we could establish that others have been late also, but have not been similarly disciplined. Now, if we can show any of these things, they've got no case.
I was there. I didn't miss any work.
Were you warned? What did Curtis say to you?
She was always after me about one thing or another. Maybe I was. I don't remember. Hey, I thought you guys were on my side.
We are, David, but you don't quite tell it the same way every time. When you get in that hearing, they're going to be looking for inconsistency. I want you to stick to the facts. No theories, no opinions.
Now, when you're cross-examined, it might just get aggressive, even abusive. So be cool. Make your answers brief, and don't volunteer anything, okay?
And what about the bulletin?
It was posted 4 days before the layoff. Here's a copy. I think they got us on this one.
I don't know about that, Ted. Doesn't say anything here about lunch breaks. Look, the thing's not even dated. So when's the thing supposed to be effective?
Well, what do you know? A fatal flaw. I wonder if Calloway noticed that.
Maybe. We'll have to wait and see. If there's no effective date, it just might not constitute proper notice. Let's look at what kind of case management's got. See where they're weak, where they're strong. And then we can develop our own strategy. This is going to be a tough one, Ted. I think we ought to do a dry run. Why don't you play devil's advocate and see if you can poke holes in my argument? Okay, David, let's go through your story once again.
Sure, I was...